Hey, it's the Preacher here. Today we're going to be loading some 223 rounds. I load a couple different loads that I primarily use in a 223. I load some for a bolt action Tikka that I have, and then I have 3 ARs, 2 DPMS, and 1 Colt long range with a 24-inch barrel. I developed this load for the Colt with a 24-inch barrel, and I shoot really tight groups, about a ½ inch, a little less than a ½ inch at 100 yards with a 5-shot group. So this works well in my AR and my Colt. It works well in my DPMS. Now I'm loading up some rounds for a preacher friend of mine who just bought a Anderson Arms. And so we're going to give him a try in his, and I want to show you this load that I use. You'll notice in all of my reloading videos that I use this powder, IMR 3031, and the reason for that is this. I only reload 3 calibers at the time. I load 223, 5.56, I load 243, and I load 30-06. And this powder works well in all 3 of those calibers. It's recommended in all 3 of those calibers. This is PMC TAC-X ammunition that was shot, so that's the brass. I got the crimp removed. I've already primed them with the CCI 400 small rifle primers. I use these because they're available about everywhere I go. They're relatively cheap. So I've already got them primed, sized. I ran them through the tumbler. I probably could have got them cleaner, but this is clean enough for what we want to do. We're not going to store them long term. So let me show you how much powder I put in them. I have found that for my purposes, 23.1 grains works the best. And so what I'm going to be loading in each one of these is 23.1 grains of IMR 3031. That's 23.1. I'll measure each load individually. You may have a better, faster way. That's fine. This is what works for me. I know a lot of people say IMR 3031 doesn't meter well, but since I don't meter measure my powder to start with, it doesn't matter if it's off. I use the spoons and I kind of eyeball it, and I can usually get pretty close. If I'm not talking, I can do it even faster, but you're not going to win the war loading at this pace. But if you're going for accuracy, it's okay. So let me get the rest of these loaded, and then we'll look at the dyes that we're using today. Okay, we have everything filled with powder. I just stuck it under a light and verified that all of them have powder in them, and they all look about normal. I didn't accidentally skip one. Now let's talk about setting up the dyes. We're going to be using the RCBS 223 556 tapered crimp die set. This is the AR series. So the best advice I can give you is make sure that all of your brass is the same size. If you're one of these guys that uses a bunch of mixed head stamps and you use all different rounds at the same time, you're going to have trouble with this. Because if your brass is just a little bit too long, if you have one piece that's a little longer than others, if you don't have uniformity, you're going to be going through here seating your bullets and everything's going to be looking great, and then you're going to bulge your shoulder out right here, because that crimp is going to press the neck of the brass down into the overall casing length, and you're going to get a bulge right in the shoulder. And I had a lot of trouble with that because I was loading so many different brands of brass at the same time. Okay, so what we got now that we've got our brass done, what we want to do is we want to put the brass in there, back the die off, back the cedar off, and run it up into the die. And then we're going to bring this down until we start to feel pressure against the top of the brass. That's where the crimp would start engaging. So we want to back that off about a full, I'd say a full turn. Tighten it up. Now we're going to bring it, run the die to the bottom. I'm going to grab a bullet. Let me say a little bit about these bullets. These are Spear 52 grain hollow points. And the opening of the hollow point is much wider than the 50 grain Spear TNTs. That wider opening gives it a much more rapid expansion, so you get less pass through, you get less ricochet if you miss, because the bullet just deforms so quickly. These shoot very well in my rifles, and I think you ought to try them. Another reason you ought to try them, these are $139 a thousand at Midway USA. Just no special deals, everyday price. You can often find them for around $120 a thousand. So you're talking $120 a thousand, you're talking 12 cents for each bullet, and that's pretty cheap for a good varmint. We don't have prairie dogs here, but coyotes. If you prairie dog hunt a lot, you're probably familiar with the bullet anyways. So we've backed our cedar die off. We are going to set the bullet on the brass, run it up into the die. I'm going to bring the cedar die down till we start to fill it. I'm going to get a little bit of a seat. I know that ain't enough. We're going to sneak up on it. And all we're looking for is to get the bullet depth here. Okay, so now that we've got the bullet seated to the proper depth, we're going to back the cedar section of the die out. We're going to loosen the lock nut. We're going to run the die, or run the rod up into the die. I'm going to go down till we feel a little pressure, then just go a little bit more. Now once you have it the right crimp, the amount of crimp that you want on there, and I don't recommend a lot. You can easily over crimp these. So once you get that right, the way you want it, tighten that die up. Now thread the bullet seating depth down till you just start to feel it hit the top of the bullet. Tighten it up. It's got a little bit of a crimp. I like to run them through a gauge and make sure they will fire, that they fit flush on the top. You don't have excess brass sticking out of the bottom. You know that round's going to fire. So let's run one now that the die is set and check it. That's what we want. 2.248. Let's see if it fits in the gauge. Drops in flush. No brass sticking out. You just barely see the brass. We know that round will fire in an AR. Let's run another one and just make sure that wasn't an accident, that we did it right. Looks good. Checks out. All right. 3 down, 37 to go. Come back when we get done. Let's talk about cost on this round. Just in components, since the brass is already shot, all we have in it is our time. We have a bullet. The bullet is somewhere around 12 cents delivered to the door. 12 cents in the bullet. The powder, 23.3 grains, somewhere around 2 or 3 cents for powder. We've got a little over 3 cents in the primer. I did all the math and added it up, and I came up to a box of 20 just for the components. $4.70 for a box of 20 if you have your own brass. That's not taking into account all the materials that you use, the brushes that you wear out, the different cutters that you wear out, the equipment you have to buy. But if you have all that paid for and all that's taken care of and you have time on your hands, you can load 20 of these for $4.70 and you get pretty good accuracy. At least I do. You may have to adjust the powder, but IMR 3031 powder is very common. You can find it in about any reloading store. It's always in stock. The reason I use it, large number of calibers I can reload with it. I shoot mainly smaller calibers. I don't shoot belted magnums. 30-30 shooters love it. So I would encourage you to get some IMR 3031 and play with it. If you shoot 243, 223, 22 250. And any of the 22 calibers, I would encourage you to use the Spear 52 grain hollow point if you're a varmint hunter. It's a very economical bullet. There's no need to have 20 powders under your table unless you're a big time shooter and you have a lot of calibers and you like to do load development. I'm a hunter first, a shooter second. I like to shoot a lot. It's a very economical bullet to stockpile. That way when the price goes back up, you're not hurting. Thanks for watching.